Welcome to our guide on how to get good at Sigma. Perhaps the hero with the highest skill cap. Players who are able to master this main tank will be able to counter and destroy everything the pathetic enemy team throws their way. Sigma's bread and butter is his primary fire, which allows him to propel 2 explosive balls of fun directly into the face of anyone who looks at you the wrong way. Players should however be careful, as Sigma is able to hurt himself in his own confusion. This ability is basically a faster and shorter range version of Junkrat nades, which coincidentally pairs very well to bully enemy players in the right situations. Players should also keep in mind that the balls have the ability to bounce off of surfaces depending on the angle they are thrown. This allows players with 12-digit IQs to land kills that would otherwise be impossible for those who can't see in binary code or are fluent in Minecraft enchantment table language. The way the balls behave incentivizes players to take a high ground advantage to make hitting targets easier, but an even better situation is to spam this shit into small rooms or choke points that make it hard to be avoided by anyone walking through. Sigma's primary fire never needs to reload, so if there's an opportunity to get even a slightly higher ultimate charge for free, players should always strive to maximize this opportunity. In the end, players should always be attempting to land the much more damaging direct hits, but even when it comes to the often negligible splash damage, Sigma misses every shot he doesn't take. Despite his ability to oftentimes deal more damage than the designated damage dealers on his team, Sigma is still at his core a main tank. His very adaptable barrier can not only be repositioned as often as he'd like, but it can also be left at advantageous places or be used in clutch ways to bail out teammates from otherwise fatal damage. Sigma, although able to be used as a main tank, can also be flexible enough to be run in conjunction with a second barrier, which will not only provide far more protection for the rest of your team, but also has a passive of immediately taking 30 SR from hit scan 1 tricks. Players should maintain constant communication with the second tank on their team and ensure only one barrier is used at a time in order to have a constant wall to keep out people who are different and therefore dangerous. Sigma's barrier can be recalled at any time and should be taken down whenever it's not actively stopping someone on your team from being immediately deleted. In fact, balancing the downtime of Sigma's shield is one of the most important skills for a Sigma player, so aspiring professionals should be managing that shit like a Fortune 500 company. Having the barrier break will make it unusable for several seconds and will temporarily reduce Sigma's ability to mitigate a majority of threats. These include completely mitigating a high noon, blocking a Reinhardt from stunning your entire team, and when the stars align perfectly, making Pharah kill herself with her own barrage. For a character who floats imposingly through the air and can summon an experimental barrier at will, it sure seems out of place that his next ability is just a big old fucking rock. Although, despite its primitive appearance, this shit is still one of the most effective additions to his arsenal. Landing this repurposed Doomfist ability will stun the target for just long enough to line up an easy follow-up shot. This means that a good Sigma player will be able to one-shot any fucking squishy with good aim and make them wonder why they waited through a 15-minute DPS queue time just to be styled on by a homeless man with no shoes. Not only can the rock cancel the action of any enemy, which in itself is a huge utility, but it's worth mentioning that the stun time is increased relative to the horizontal distance it's thrown. This means that players who are able to Kobe Geodude from half court will be able to have an enemy down long enough to ruin their fucking day. We now get to his shift ability, which is just a budget defense matrix that gives a portion of shields relative to the amount of damage taken. This big suck can be used to just walk through choke points and come out ahead, or be used to draw the attention of a threat long enough to be taken down. The ability itself should be used for when high damage actions are burned, as simply absorbing a fire strike will net a player a minuscule amount of shields and leave them particularly vulnerable during its enormous cooldown. A way I personally use the ability is to just walk up to an enemy player and hold it in their face. The kinetic grasp will completely mitigate every piece of damage most heroes are able to deal, regardless of the direction they happen to be facing. If the rest of your team are anywhere near you, it is unlikely that the enemy player will be able to do anything but rethink their strategy on the way back from the spawn room. Sigma's most terrifying ability that makes him so formidable is his ultimate, which is just a Doomfist meteor strike, but with extra steps. The ultimate will lock down all enemy players caught in the radius, lift them into the air inflicting 50 damage before slamming them back to earth, dealing damage relative to half their base health. Not only will this leave most squishy targets with only a laughable amount of health, but it will also deal bulk damage to any tanks your team wants to make redundant. Although this ability can deal an absolute fucking metric shit ton of damage and nicely pad out your endgame stats, even catching the entire team in this vortex of death won't guarantee that anyone will actually die. Much like a Zarya ultimate, this shit is designed to butter up the enemy team, while one of your 5 clearly inferior teammates deal the remaining tiny percentage of damage. With this being said, Sigma players are able to usually guarantee at least a single kill on a squishy target, assuming they can land one volley of their better Junkrat projectiles. If your team is ready to follow up however, it can at times appear to be impossible to lose the fight, even if you seem to be playing with people who use a Switch controller. The secret ingredient to successfully use the ultimate is to make it more surprising than the abrupt end to this video. Staying somewhat hidden will allow players to much less obviously telegraph their malicious intentions and instill a sense of panic into the other team that will hopefully make them either overcommit or undercommit to the fight. Players also forget that Sigma can fucking fly during the casting time, meaning enemy players might never see you cast the ability in the first place. There are however abilities that are particularly suited to pair with this crazy strong initiator. An EMP will make it impossible for the other team to escape the damaging slam, and furthermore, block all barriers and significant healing abilities from working. A Norisusak, on the other hand, is a much cheaper ability to pair, and depending on the positioning of your damage dealers, may be the easiest team wipe you've ever had. Obviously the same principle could be applied to a Grav, but no rational team on the planet would do the equivalent of using a car brush to clean their teeth. Although, sometimes the point isn't even to kill enemy players, and instead, simply lock them in place long enough to capture a point, push an objective, or insult their entire bloodline in the voice chat. Most of the time, the enemy team either has to commit a defensive ultimate or accept their timely demise. However, Batiste can completely eliminate your entire sense of self-worth on a short cooldown, meaning it's crucial to bait out his immortality field if you ever want to secure a single fucking kill. On the flip side, players unlucky enough to be caught in a Sigma ultimate should do their utmost to protect themselves and inch away from as many threats as possible. The general strategy to playing Sigma is to land as much damage as possible and to always maintain your shield. With this in mind, it's often viable to take off angles on the enemy team and just dump damage into players who underestimate your crazy frag potential. Players are often able to go to extremes with this strategy, putting themselves in positions that are extremely hard to contest, which will force the other team to either commit to taking you out or neglect the remaining 5 other members of your team, who are more than happy to abuse the space and confusion you've been able to create. One of the most appealing parts of Sigma is that he's a Swiss Army knife when it comes to dealing with threats. In fact, it's hard to name even a single ability in this game that Sigma can't more or less counter, given he has the game sense and reaction time to pull it off. This hero's skill ceiling is higher than Snoopy at 20 past 4, meaning Galaxy Brain players will be able to hard carry even the most toxic and uncoordinated teammates. More formidable threats, however, will be impossible to overcome without assistance, and due to Sigma's incredible ability to stop damage and stun targets, it will very likely be the job of everyone else to click heads, while you shut down the other team harder than Blizzard shutting down free speech. Perhaps the most important thing a Sigma can do, even if it's been said a million times, is to just push W and enjoy your easy SR gain. The ability to reposition your shield rapidly and without a movement penalty makes him able to make relentless progress when it comes to pushing into a fortified team. When oftentimes, Simply getting your team in a position to fight is half the battle. Sigma's aggressive playstyle in itself is able to carry games and put your team where they need to be to murder some fucking degenerates. Although, at the end of the day, always remember that the Overwatch League banned hide like a bitch move can oftentimes serve just as useful as any other tool in the Sigma toolbox. This concludes today's guide on how to get good at Sigma. You'll now be able to easily climb into top 500 as a tank while still maintaining a healthy silver rating on your other roles. Subscribe to forget about the setup for this long game joke, but until next time, have fun and embrace